Hello all, it's Shifty here, and today I'm going to be testing different methods of getting to space using a hydrogen-based ship. There are, of course, other ways to get to space, but this is one of the easiest and most common ways, so that is what we're going to be focusing on. To do this, we'll be comparing time, fuel efficiency, and ease of use. As you can see, we've got 7 identical ships. I've loaded them all up with the same cargo just to simulate an actual survival flight, and with them we are going to be testing 7 different methods. We've got 3 which will be manual thruster control, 2 using vanilla block controls, and then 2 using scripts. I will bookmark each test in the video, and while we're going up, I'll describe exactly what I'm doing and how you can set up the method yourself so that when the video is over, you can go back, pick your favorite, and put it to use right away. All right, the first method we're going to test is constant thrust. This one's pretty straightforward. We're going to jump in our ship, turn our stockpile off, and then detach and just press spacebar and hold it. We are going to leave our inertial dampeners on for this, just to keep us going straight, and because I think that is kind of fitting for this test. This is not something that's going to be very efficient, but it is going to be a very good baseline for us to compare our other tests to. When we get to space, I do have on all of the ships an event controller, so when we hit just under 0.05 Gs, so when planetary gravity disappears, it will automatically shut off our thrusters, turn our tank to stockpile, and then we'll be able to see exactly how much fuel we have used. There we go, and we are out of gravity. Everything is turned off. You can see our hydrogen tank automatically turned to stockpile on. So now we can go check and we can see exactly how much hydrogen we have. Back on Earth here, I have tallied up everything for the first test. It took 172,320 liters of hydrogen, and it took us 7 minutes and 25 seconds to get to space. I always thought it took longer than that. It always feels longer than that, but I guess 7 minutes, it's not terribly long. I think all of our times are going to be very similar for these, so I'm not too worried about the time it takes, unless something is dramatically different. Mostly I'm looking at the fuel. And the last thing I have written here, easy, that's entirely subjective, so take it with a grain of salt. I think that was pretty easy to set up and pretty easy to perform. The next test we are going to is manual pulse. The way we're going to do this is we just jump on the cockpit here, turn off that, unlock, and then we are going to press spacebar till we get up to speed. We're going to turn our inertial dampeners off for this one. This is important. Turn the inertial dampeners off. And basically, I'm going to hold spacebar, get us up to just under max speed, and then I'm going to release the spacebar, right? So I'm just going to pulse my thrusters, but I'm never going to be thrusting when I'm at max speed. And then I'll let it drop down to, I don't know, 95, 90 something. And we'll just kind of pulse our thrusters here so that we're never expending more than we have to continue going upwards. This is the way I tend to do it in the game. And you can see I'm talking here. I'm not doing it perfectly. Sometimes I'm going a little bit, pulsing a little bit longer than I need to. I get up to max speed and my thumb doesn't release the spacebar quick enough. But this gets a lot easier as gravity starts to drop off because you don't get pulled down as quickly when you release spacebar. Now it's important to have the inertial dampeners off for this because if you have them on, every time you release, every time you stop pushing up, your thrusters will push you down, and that's going to use a ton more fuel. So I usually bob here at around somewhere between 90 and 95 meters per second until I start getting up a little bit higher, and then I try to go for sticking around 95 meters per second. This is a lot more tedious to do, but it is going to be incredibly more fuel efficient. So I'll see you up there. Right, we are in space here, and let's take a look at our hydrogen usage. There we go, there's the numbers. A little bit of math, and we find that we have used 55,776 liters, and it took us 7 minutes and 44 seconds. I would rate that one as taxing, simply because it's a little bit tedious. There's a lot of micromanaging you've got to do while you're going up, and it's not terribly difficult. It's okay, but it's a little bit taxing on what you have to do while you're actually playing the game. Now, if you're not doing anything else, you're just playing the game, it at least gives you something to do while you go up, which is kind of why I like it. but again, to each their own. We did use a little less than a third the amount of fuel, and we took about 20 seconds longer because we weren't always going at max speed. Our third test is going to be thruster override. This is the one that everyone says this is the best way to do it. You should do it this way. If you're not doing it this way, you're doing it wrong. Now, I have objections to those comments usually because it's a sandbox game, and I think you should just play the game however you enjoy playing the game. But we're going to go ahead and test this for efficiency, and we'll see if maybe it is the most efficient. Now, I have set up a hotbar with thruster increase and thruster decrease, thruster override. And I have set that up just with our up thrusters, right? So that's what you want to put on your hotbar. You want to go in, get your thruster. I'm attached, so it's a little bit confusing. But you get your upward thrusters, put them all in a group. And on your hotbar, you have thruster increase and thruster decrease on your override. Now, this is the dangerous part. And this is where I've seen a lot of people fall out of the sky and blow their ships up. If you are flying your ship and you hit thruster override increase, that will make your ship go from hovering nicely to now having the minimum thruster override, which will probably not be enough to make your ship fly, and it will cause you to fall out of the sky. So be very careful with that. The way to get around that is make sure you're high enough before you start doing it so you won't hit the ground, or go into your menu, find your thruster, and then, or your group of thrusters, your up thrusters, and just manually set them to maximum override and step your way down from there. That's a decent option. You could also just be parked, make sure you're parked, and then thruster override your way up to maximum and then detach. No matter what you're doing, basically, when you initially start this process, you are going to waste a little bit of fuel. Unless you have some way to know exactly how much you're going to need. But as your inventories change and everything, it's not going to be obvious. Let's stockpile back up to max. Okay, we are good. Now, what I'm going to do is the fall out of sky method because that's the method I see most often. I'm not lying. This is what most people do. You detach here, I'm going to unlock, and then I'm going to hit thruster override, promptly fall out of the sky, and then we will increase our thruster override. I'm going to make sure I'm level again so that we're not screwing around. You increase your thruster override until you are accelerating. Someone in the comments is gonna be like, "Oh, you're doing this completely wrong." Everyone does it differently. This is a fairly accurate representation of what most people do, though. So we're waiting for it to get up near max speed, and then I can decrease my thruster override so that we sit at max speed without really gaining or losing speed. And I'm gonna micromanage this like I did my previous one. So basically, I'm going to use thruster override instead of pulsing to remain very close to max speed, but never at max speed. And this is a little bit easier. You can see I'm constantly going up and down, and as soon as I get to max speed, I decrease my thruster override to make sure that I'm not over thrusting. And I kind of just go back and forth. Now, the way I see a lot of people doing this is they'll just get up to max speed, and they'll just leave it there. And they'll walk away and they'll come back and then they'll tune it down once or twice during their trip. They won't micromanage it, which I guess is fine. You're still going to use less fuel than if you were just holding spacebar or just constantly thrusting up, but it is going to waste a little bit of fuel. Speaking of fuel, here we are in space, and this is how much we have left. That means we used 56,446 liters, and it took us 7 minutes and 38 seconds. I would rate this method as potentially dangerous in a very similar way as using parking brake is potentially dangerous. You can do it right and it cannot be dangerous, or you can occasionally make a mistake and blow your entire grid up. So potentially dangerous, and I think it's also taxing. It is slightly less taxing than the previous method in that you don't technically have to micromanage it as much. But remember, the less you micromanage it, the less fuel efficient you are going to be. Now, it is slightly faster than the previous method, but again, look at this time. 7 minutes, 38 seconds. This one was 7 minutes and 44 seconds. We're not talking a crazy amount of time, unless you think that 6 seconds is gonna just make your day that much better. I don't know. You can play the game how you want to play the game, but we are going to move on to our next set of ships. These are the ones that are going to be controlled by the blocks, the block control in the game, vanilla stuff. Don't need scripts or anything for these. And the first one is going to be the remote control. Now these ones are going to be fun for me because I'm not going to have to do anything. I just have to set our hydrogen tank to not stockpile, unlock, let's get to the right control group, unlock, and turn our remote control on. Now I'm going to switch to a view from this angle, and I will describe how I set this up as we go into space. The setup for this is not all that difficult. All you need is a remote control block placed on your grid somewhere, and then you will go in to your remote, scroll down here a bit, make sure that you set a collision avoidance to off. Precision mode will also be off. You'll set it to one way, forward direction forwards, assuming you placed your remote control the way I showed it. And then you choose a waypoint that is in space. Now, you are going to have to go up into space before you do this at some point to get that waypoint. Either that or you're going to have to do a little bit of math, but you're going to have to get a waypoint in space for this to work, which does require a little bit of setup, but that's basically it. You can also use multiple waypoints. You can make a waypoint. I like to make one just right above wherever my ship is parked, and I'll have it go to that waypoint first and then into space. That seems to work a little bit better than just trying to go directly to space, but technically you only really need the space waypoint. Once you have that, you just have to add to your hotbar a ship remote control, and it toggles autopilot on and off. You just have to be able to turn it on. I like to be able to turn it on and off. But that's the whole setup for that one. I will note, however, while we're going up here, that for some reason, when I'm using the remote control to go directly to the waypoint from the landing pad, the ship tends to get stuck in this really buggy wobble, and it stops going up. I tried using the remote control to go up to space probably 8 times before I got it to go all the way in a single run. So do keep that in mind. If you get stuck in the wobble, you're probably not going to get unstuck. It just sits there and wiggles its butt as long as you let it do it. You can get unstuck by turning off your remote control, backing up or moving forwards, and then turning it back on. That usually works, but note that if you are going to start your remote control, get up and walk away, you might come back just wobbling 10 feet above your base. That said, we did manage to get a run where we got all the way to space, and here are the results. That took us 251,074 liters and 8 minutes and 6 seconds. So about 80,000 more liters than just holding spacebar, and a whole nother 41 seconds. So you're probably better off staying at your desk and just holding spacebar the entire time than trusting yourself with the remote control. And I decided to rate that one a maybe because maybe you'll get to space. Maybe you'll just wobble. Our next entry is the basic AI and the AI flight. Now this one I have slightly higher hopes for because the AI is more recently developed, but we are going to find out together if this works. To get this going, you also are going to need a waypoint in space, but then once you have that, you just unlock your ship and flip on your 2 AIs. And this should take us all the way up there. For this, you are going to need the AI Flight Move and the AI Basic Task blocks. I have them both set on facing forwards, as you can see. The AI Flight Move block has the following settings. It is going to be set to on at all times, and when you want the AI behavior to be on, you'll just turn the AI behavior on. I have collision avoidance off, but you can have that on as well. With it on, it may cause weird movement while you're still close to your base, so I just recommend having it off. Precision mode is also off for me, so that we can quickly ramp up to max speed. Now, I have mine set to 100 meters per second. You might think, oh, if you just set this down a little bit, it'll use less fuel, right? In my experience, not really, because it will thrust up to 97 meters per second, go a little bit over, and then thrust downwards, and then thrust up, and then thrust down, and it just wobbles kind of back and forth there, constantly using one thruster or the other. So you might as well just set this to 100 meters per second. Min altitude I set to 0, again, so that it doesn't cause weird issues when I'm landed or close to my landing pad. I do want it to align to planetary gravity, and I want the angles just to be 0. You can change all of this, but the way my ship is set up, I want it to use my downward thrusters for lifting myself up into space, and this is a way to guarantee that you are primarily or only using those thrusters to do so. The AI basic block is also always set to on, and when we want the AI behavior to be on, we specifically set that on. I have it set to autopilot one way, and I just picked my one waypoint up in space. That's all you need for that one. If you want it to go to various waypoints, you can have it run a path. That'll work just fine. You can have it maybe fly up and then out of a hangar or something, but we are just doing simple up to space, so that is what we have set. On your hotbar, all you really need is AI flight move, AI behavior on and off, and the AI basic task, AI behavior on and off. When you want to go to space, you'll just toggle both of those on. If you want to stop going to that location, you just toggle both of them off. That is going to be it for the setup. Now here are the results for the flight test. The fuel consumption was a new record high of 256,071 liters, and our total time was 7 minutes and 40 seconds. So at least the time was on par with our manual setups. I'm going to rate this a thirsty though, because it took the most amount of fuel so far, and I think it's going to be the most fuel out of anything because our next ships are going to be hopefully a whole lot smarter. These ones are going to be using programmable blocks with in-game scripting to take care of all of our thruster control for us. The first entry is Planet to Space by Juggernaut 93, and let's just jump right into this. We're going to come in. This on the hotbar is going to be very easy. We unlock and we hit number 2. And that should basically be everything we have to do. This is going to take us to space, and I'll explain how we set it up on the way. First off, if you want to be using scripts in-game, you're going to have to enable experimental mode. To do that, go to your main Space Engineers menu, choose Options, and then go to Game. In there, you will find Enable Experimental Mode, and you'll just toggle that on and click OK. If you are playing single player or hosting a game locally, you're also going to have to load your world. Go to Edit Settings, Advanced, and then scroll down and make sure to toggle in-game scripts on. Once you have that, you click OK again, and you should be able to load your world and use scripts. If you are playing on a dedicated server, you will have to ask the server admin for the scripter role. The easiest way to get scripts is to go to your workshop of choice, find one that you like, and simply subscribe. To load your script in-game, hop in your ship, find your programmable block, scroll down and hit Edit, and then Browse Scripts. This is where you will find all of your scripts. You might have to refresh or wait a minute, but everything that you subscribe to should show up here. Scroll through the list, find the one that you want, and click Copy to Editor. Then click OK, and your script is loaded. Now, every script is different, so from here I recommend going to the workshop page and reading through any setup documentation they have. For Planet to Space, that requires me to set up an aligner group, including a gyroscope and a cockpit or a remote control or something facing forwards, so I went ahead and did that. And now I should be able to run the script according to the startup procedure. Now, you could run it from the menu here, but then I would have to type in any argument I want to run it with every single time. So I'm going to go ahead and just put it on my hotbar. So I take my Planet to Space, drag it to my hotbar, hit run, and now whatever I type in here, every time I hit number 2 on my hotbar, it will run the script with whatever the input is. For Planet to Space, I'm going to want to run mine with aligner, semicolon, and true. That is a setup specifically for my ship. Your ship might be different, so read through their documents and make sure you're doing it right. I'll hit confirm. And the other thing I have on my hotbar is actually just a run programmable block with the word stop. That is how this specific script is stopped. So if I want to stop going to space, I can run it with the stop command. And it won't show up what your inputs are, so you'll just have to remember what they are on here, because they're both technically just run commands. Different scripts work differently. Like I said, you got to read the documentation. So that is all the setup for this one. Now let's look at the results. This one took 59,286 liters with a total time of 7 minutes 48 seconds. Decided to rate it a WHTR. That stands for work hard then relax, because that's kind of my opinion on all scripts. They are a bit of work to get set up, but once you have them subscribed, setting them up in your world is not terribly difficult. You just load them in, and once you have them loaded in, it is very relaxing to use them. They really add a lot of functionality to the game, and I'm glad that they are an option. We're going to compare all of the different times and fuel consumptions side by side at the end, so we're not going to do that just yet. Our last test is going to be with Blarg's Ascent Cruise Control, which was made, of course, by Blargmode. This is another script, so it should be pretty easy to use, and that was a pretty good start. We'll reorient our view, and I'll see you up there. The setup for this one is fairly straightforward. You'll get the script loaded just like I described for the previous one, and then on your hotbar, you're going to want to add a run with the word swap. That will toggle between forwards and upwards cruise control. Then I added a run with the number 99. This is setting your desired max speed. I wanted it to be slightly below the max speed in the game so that we weren't blowing extra fuel unnecessarily. It is going to take slightly longer, but a few extra seconds I think is worth the bonus fuel efficiency. Our last run is going to be empty, and that is the one we're going to use to turn on and turn off our cruise control. Once you've clicked number 2 and number 3, and you are sure that you are going in the up position and you've clicked 3 once, you can actually just remove those from the hotbar because the script will remember those settings, and then you can just have your blank inputs, which will be your on-off switch. As we're heading into space one last time here, I just want to thank everyone in the Discord for their input on this project. It really did help, and I want to thank you for watching. If this video has been enjoyable, definitely consider hitting the like button. You can subscribe as well if you want to see more videos like this in the future. But for now, let's get right to the results. This ship set a new record for fuel efficiency and time if you don't count the constant thrust ship. It used only 54,902 liters, and it only took 7 minutes 32 seconds. This brings us to our final results. I put them up on the page here, but we've got a slightly better visual so that you can see what's going on. For manual inputs, you can see that our constant thrust was by far less fuel efficient, but it was our overall fastest time. That is always going to be that way because there's no screwing around in that method. You're just going straight up as fast as possible. Manual pulse and thruster override are, in my book, interchangeable. You kind of just use whichever one you prefer, because the fuel efficiency and the time is very similar. The faster you are going with thruster override, the more time you are saving, the more likely you are to be wasting fuel, and the same is true for manual pulse. It really comes down to how well you can do it because it is dependent on user input. For block controls, I honestly do not recommend using a remote control, simply because the vast majority of my trials, I did not get to space. I got stuck somewhere, it bugged out, and we didn't get there. On the other hand, the basic AI plus the AI flight was very satisfying to use. So if you don't have an issue with using tons of fuel, if fuel is not a problem, then I'd honestly recommend doing this. This is a good method. AI flight plus AI basic, set a waypoint in space, flip them both on, and you're good to go. You can walk away, you come back, you'll be in space. You can also have it trigger other events with the AI blocks once you get to your destination. So I think that's a great option, especially if you don't have access to scripts, if you're playing on a server without scripts, or you just don't want to deal with that nonsense. The AI flight plus AI basic is what you should go for. Lastly, we have our programmable blocks running scripts. The planet to space script did pretty darn good. It probably could be a little bit more fuel efficient if I tuned down the max speed on it, but it will take a little bit longer then. And Blarg's Ascent Cruise Control was actually the best for fuel efficiency and took the shortest amount of time. So if you're going to go out of any of these options, all of them, I would recommend Blarg's Ascent Cruise Control because it did the best overall. The trade-off for these blocks is, of course, that you have to leave the game, go to a workshop, find some scripts, download them, set them all up. It's a little bit of a pain, but if you're willing to take the time, I do think it is worthwhile to give it a try. As always, I did try to be unbiased while doing this testing. However, if you object to the results, I welcome you to rant about it in the comments, or better yet, download this world for yourself. I will put it on the workshop. All links to that, links to these different scripts will be in the video description. Go down there, try things out yourself, and then rant in the comments. For now though, I do hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.